It's the early 1860s in Australia, and the people of Brisbane are in a dire situation. Their water is undrinkable and they have no alternatives. With a growing population and options dwindling, the council makes the decision to clear-cut acres of virgin forest. But what happens next ends up saving some of the most amazing forest Queensland has to offer. This is the story of how 3 reservoirs helped save Brisbane's backyard rainforests.
So today we are heading up to the rainforests of the Diagla Ranges, and I wanted to bring you with me because I wanted to show you why I was inspired to make this story in the first place.
The national park sits just west of Brisbane and stretches out unbroken for 70 kilometres, blanketed over the Taylor and Diagla ranges. Spanning over 38,000 hectares, Diagla is a mosaic of ecosystems. Dry eucalypt woodlands dominate the lower slopes, which make up the majority of the park. As the altitude climbs, the forest closes in on itself, becoming a mix of wet sclerophyll and stands of subtropical rainforest. Characterized by tall trees spanning up to 60 meters in height and a verdant, seemingly ever-wet understory of ferns, mosses, and wildlife.
Just being in these forests, the air feels denser, it feels like you've stepped back in time when you're surrounded by these giant buttressed trees and giant ferns. And it's quite a feeling. Definitely feel like I'm in some kind of Jurassic forest here, and it kind of just is a testament to the age of these forests and how far back the tree species lineages do go. These rainforests are special. They are the closest of their kind to Brisbane, and they have survived countless climatic changes and wildfires over the thousands of years that they have been established in these hills.
They are sustained by high rainfalls, brought in from the coast as water-bearing air dumps its load over the highland ranges. Ranges which formed millions of years ago through volcanic eruptions and subsequent erosion, laying the nutrient-rich foundations for these wet forests to flourish upon. The mixed forests offer habitat for a diverse range of plant and animal species, and it is considered one of the best places in Australia for birdwatching. With over 240 species being known to inhabit the region, these forests are a haven for critically endangered and rare species of bird, which, without this habitat, might have faded into the history books. By the early 1840s, loggers were already pushing high up into the ranges. The terrain was tough, it's steep, and heavily overgrown, but to them it was worth it. Because these early loggers were enticed by giant red cedar, hoop pine, and other hardwood species, prized for their construction and furniture making. To this day, wood gathered in the 1800s can still be found in some of the oldest Queenslanders scattered around the city of Brisbane. But it wasn't just timber that attracted people to these ranges. The geology of the ranges formed by ancient volcanoes drew in another wave of hardy folk, the prospectors. At the time the American gold rush was at its peak, Australian gold fever turned prospectors to these mountains. For decades, small mining operations scoured the hills for gold-bearing quartz deposits. But the miners wanted to expand their operations and extract more. Forests that had been sustainably managed and relied upon by the indigenous Jinbara and Turrbal people for thousands of years were steadily being carved apart. But the problem was deeper than this. So what we need to understand is that this rainforest has a natural relationship with wildfires, and this is something that the early expansionists weren't fully aware of. What the early loggers didn't understand is that when you cut down these rainforests, they don't grow back with the same structure. Faster growing species such as eucalypts will often fill the void, and these are species which are known to be accommodating to fire. This meant that fire that was once rare in these upper regions and wet rainforests could now start pushing higher and higher, potentially threatening to wipe them out completely. So with all this going on at the time, how did any of these forests survive? And to answer that, we now need to talk about Brisbane's need for water and how these 3 reservoirs helped save these forests. So we're back in the mid-1800s, and Brisbane's population is growing, and folk are beginning to look to the surrounding forests for the construction materials they need. The rapid clearing of forests to accommodate the growing city set the scene for the problems to come and the eventual collapse of the water supply. So one of the early victims of this urban expansion in the early days of Brisbane were the lowland rainforests. In the 1860s, botanists and townfolk often visited them for their exotic species, large trees and vines, but 30 years later, and in the 1890s, they were gone. The land had been subdivided for development. The upstream lands quickly changed beyond recognition. Forests were replaced with farms and infrastructure. The impact of this deforestation was quickly apparent, and when the summer rains came, the system began to break. Forests that once slowed the water were now gone, and floods tore through the town again and again. Then came the drinking water problems. Runoff from exposed soils, dead livestock, and rotten vegetables, all coming from the upper catchments of the rivers, were ending up in the town's water supplies. By the 1860s, the water wasn't just bad, it was outright dangerous, and the town needed a new supply, and fast. The Water Board was set to the task of finding a new location for securing the city's water. This was becoming difficult because most of the catchment areas around the city were being dominated by agriculture and industry. They found 3 locations and eventually settled on one. By 1864, Anoga Creek was selected for its pristine headwaters, cheap land, and lack of farming. Joseph Brady quickly put the design together and construction began almost immediately. For 2 years from 1864, workers carved into the virgin forest, clearing, digging, and building. By 1866, the reservoir was completed. And for the first time, Brisbane had clean, reliable water. But the city didn't stop growing, and by 1881, a second reservoir was established in Gold Creek. By 1916, a third, with Lake Manchester being established in the former Cabbage Tree Creek region, each expanding the required catchment zones further into the ranges, and each requiring protection of the clean water supply. This is an excellent map showing the catchment of the reservoirs, marked as reserve land, owned by the state but managed by the Water Board, covering a combined area of 11,700 hectares. But it was a fight to keep this clear of exploitation. Loggers had existing claims to stands of high rainforest trees. Miners wanted to expand into the reserve for better deposits, and companies wanted to establish banana plantations. Through the late 1800s, the Water Board campaigned to have the land vested in their name so that they could protect it from logging and other industry. They were concerned that logging, mining, and plantations established in the various water reserves would pollute the water source and bring about a return to the old troubles that the city was plagued by. Logging companies still had a stake in the land and fought to stop them losing this.
So one of the things I wanted to show you today was this old lumber mill, but unfortunately the trail is closed, so I'm not going to be able to show you that. But I will put some photos in the video so you can see what I'm talking about. And the reason I wanted to show this was because this is up in Mount Glorious. It's not an easy place to get to, especially 160 years ago. This is tough terrain, and it's a testament to just how much these loggers valued this timber and the lengths that they would go to extracting this resource.
By 1909, the reserve land was finally vested into the Water Board's name. Nearly 50 years after the reserves were established, they were finally protected. However, there were still calls for banana plantations and logging well into the 20th century. There was a renewed interest in the resources that lay in these hills, but fortunately, naturalists had already recognized the significance of these forests. Romeo LaHaye, who was pivotal in establishing Lamington National Park years earlier, amongst others, had been working hard in the background to establish the national reserves in these ranges. They had managed to secure 6 protected areas of forest between 1938 and 1948. After the Second World War, and despite the need for timber, Australia was in an economic downturn, and it needed to employ the thousands of soldiers returning from the fronts. They decided to employ these soldiers to build tracks up in the rainforests, tracks that would attract people from the city and provide a cheap leisure activity. This opened up the ranges to tourism, and what followed gradually secured the ranges as a national heritage. By the 1970s, the environmental awareness movements were growing across the world and the park was further secured. And by 2006, it officially became a national park, with the consolidation of the various different reserved areas. When I visit these woods, I often think about how different this story could have been. Today, the reservoirs are still present, though not used for water so much, but more for leisure. They played a crucial role in protecting the forests here long enough so that they could become national reserves. Even though the forests have felt the ravages of time and settlement in the region, the mixed habitat remains nearly as it was before the loggers, miners, and colonists arrived. When walking through the dense understory, I wonder how this landscape could have looked if the reservoirs weren't here, and if the woods would still stand to this day in their current form. But for now, I'm just glad that those of us living in Brisbane can escape the city life and be amongst this truly wild place. Brisbane's backyard rainforests in the kingdom of Diagla.